How do you feel you have changed since you entered Hawza? For me personally, I feel like it's been really transformative, but it'd be really nice to get your take. What do you think changed the most about you?
I think I've got a more nuanced outlook on Islam in general. I think as a community we tend to think of things in black and white, even if we don't intentionally do that. But coming to the Hawza and looking at things critically, it sort of it gives you a more nuanced outlook. And
you appreciate the diversity, right? Like, if I agree with that completely. It always used to be so black and white. You know, like you almost have Shias on one side, Sunnis on the other. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I second what you say. There's a lot more appreciation for Islam in all aspects, or in all sects. In nature. I think, as you say, it's just more like you broaden your understanding of Islam, and that's what I found myself.
What about personally? Did you ever feel like? Because I sometimes feel like I was a different person when I came in, and now it's 4th year. And I do genuinely feel quite different in the sense that I emotionally have developed a lot. So in the beginning, in the first year, I found it quite hard because it was full time. I mentioned this before. I used to get really stressed around exams, like full on, unable to cope with housework, work, whatever, and exams. And then each semester, I felt like even though the modules were going up in number, it got slightly easier, which is odd.
I think it tests your resilience.
It
makes you more. It toughens you up almost, because like when I was at uni, we had about 6 modules over a whole year, and then we have 11 modules in a semester here, and just the intensity is crazy. But by the end of it, you think you can accomplish anything, because you when you go to the masters or a PhD or whatever, and the workload is just. I mean, you've done the most workload you could ever do, and then after that, it doesn't seem that hard.
It can only get easier.
Yeah.
Third year was the most intense.
Yeah.
And then, but I noticed that's also when things started clicking a little bit.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, just finishing 3rd year now, the first 2 years you're like lost in the wilderness, and then eventually everything just comes together. And
do you know, in the beginning, I couldn't understand usul. I found it really hard to connect any of the dots.
And now you're writing masters on it.
Yeah. I want to do it for masters now. What about you, Yusuf? Like, you always struck me as a bit of a psychology dude. You're always looking up, that aspect, and we don't study it as much here. So what do you feel like you got out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I find it beneficial to continuously apply what's being taught rather than just accumulating all the knowledge. So it's always good to look at it holistically. So what we study, what we do in Hawza, and then what do we do the day after if we're going to work, or doing a sport or going to the gym. How does it add to the value of our life after we've done that lesson, or you've spent that day doing Hawza? What then? Because obviously the whole idea of learning this is we develop ourselves, become better human beings. So it's just a constant application of what we're learning, and then so that it doesn't pile up at one go. Then you apply all this huge amount of knowledge, you can't do it. So for me, it's about continuously trying to apply it before it's too late, because it's going to be too much knowledge. So for my journey, it was more like a holistic, trying to put everything in there, and how do I benefit from this, not as opposed to it being just an academic experience. So that was important for me.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, because people come to the house for many different reasons. Some might come for me, I came for an academic reason. Other people might come for a more spiritual reason. And I think even though the emphasis is on academia, you can alter it in a way to meet your needs. It's difficult.
Yeah,
it's difficult.
It's what you take out of it.
It's what you put in. That's exactly what you get back out.
But I admit it's definitely not easy, because a lot of people have to go to work to study, and it's not enough to just be a student nowadays. There's a level of expectation. Do
you guys get a lot of questions? I've started to get like phone calls of oh, can you guide me in religious matters now? That's starting to happen, and it's a little bit unnerving because it feels like it's too quick for people to start asking for my opinion.
Not for me.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a bad thing or not, but nobody's asked me anything. I mean, you get a few questions here and there.
Like a lot of ficky questions. Yeah. Also, what do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? And this, that, and the other. And you kind of just think, oh wow, that's putting a lot of, all of a sudden, responsibility on your shoulders.
Yeah. So how do you respond to that?
oh god, I look it up. I look it up,
Yeah, yeah.
verify the information. I'll check it with other students and stuff, and maybe ask
because I think we still, because we're still studying, we're still not that self-confident in what we're putting out there. I think we say, oh, we need someone else to verify it, and then we put it out. But I think we are getting to that stage now. We can think by our own.
I think one of the things I learned is to one of the big things that I sort of took away from myself is to be able to recreate what you learn. So I think that's it's very hidden sort of teaching of Islam that I've learned. It's a very personal one actually. So for example, whatever knowledge you have gained, you recreate in the way that it doesn't have to be exactly a specific response, but you give the response that you can give
at that time of your evolution.
Exactly. So I feel like that is something that sort of notion is very useful. I've always applied it for those situations. So I say to them, for example, if that was the case and it's something that I don't know, I would say, this is the level of my knowledge, this is what I can give to you. And you have an aql, you make your decision based on that, but obviously do your research, and that's where I'm at. Basically,
would you go out and become like a preacher or like a scholar like that?
I don't think preaching is something that I think anyone who has that level of Islamic knowledge now, especially in our day and age, I don't think preaching is like. I think it's very, because religion, to me, I've seen is to be something very quite individualistic. It's very difficult to impose things, but to give information and facts. So, yeah, I think. Yeah, just to the level of my knowledge, I would do what I can.
Yeah. So I think that raises an important question of what do we think the purpose of the Hawza is nowadays then? Yeah. If you're saying that you don't think you can go down that route after studying through the Hawza, then what do you think after studying all these years, what do you think we should be contributing to society?
Yeah, so I have a very community-centered approach. So I would think, not from a preaching point of view though, I think we have a lot of issues in our community because Islam has it's very jurisprudentially heavy, at least in this century, right? So that means that the traction you get from mysticism or philosophy or theology, that's not missing, but it's less than it ought to be to center it and to give it a holistic impression. And that filters down to Islamic education, that filters down to everything. And so that needs redressing in some way. So if that comes in preaching, then you need to, that's where I think AMI does such an incredible job, that it's preparing seminarians, but also to think critically in an academic way. And I think it has a role to play, because obviously it's got SIMS and other organizations attached to it. But I do think community work is important, because how else are we but grassroots community work, like humble, small, you kind of, not large lectures or anything like that. I think small community initiatives are the way though. And we have to use what we've learned to kind of apply that in some way. But yeah, no, I know what you mean about personal. I don't think I'm there yet about applying even the knowledge yet.
I think that's the other aspect of it, the whole application side of it. That's where the psychology comes in. So, even it's like having the tools, but learning how to use the tools. So that aspect of it, sometimes when you get so involved in, analyzing what the tool is, how it's made, and all this, you sort of you set aside how you can expertly use that tool in the best way. So I feel like that's the area that. I mean, you need people in all kinds of areas anyway, and to come together, and then I think probably there's your solution in finding how do you apply all this knowledge.
Just following on from that, do you think the Hawza is actually prepared to deal with the issues that we have in society nowadays? And do you think, because I think one of the benefits of AMI is that we have this hybrid approach where we do have the academic side, but then also the more, for want of a better word, the traditional side, and it combines both of them to try and prepare us to deal with those challenges. But do you think it does?
No, I think there's a long way to go. So I think AMI is further than traditional Eastern Hawzas, but there's so much more that needs to be explored yet, because I think we're still, the bridge between Sunnis and Shias is too wide, so that needs shortening. Even the kind of the way we give Islamic education to children, the madrasa system, that needs major changes. There's so much that needs to happen, but I think AMI is making major inroads in that, because there's a lot of resistance as well to change like that, and people will resist it just because it's different. But I think so yeah, I think it is helping a little bit, but much more needs to come.
Yeah, I think where AMI is doing really well in is that trying to understand, because there's a lot of solutions, but it doesn't necessarily come from, let's say, Islam specifically. It comes from, for example, different fields, science and not.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
to acknowledge.
But
that
to understand
is okay.
where is Islam in that? So to try to decipher, okay, this is one solution. Okay, how do you understand that? To open that up, and it's a very intricate debate and very it's not always black and white, but we try to see the grey areas and have conversation, debate about these things to understand what it means and how we can sort of Islamify that solution, to take the right approach. And obviously there's a lot of debate. Ultimately there's always going to be debate at the end. There's always going to be different opinions, and it's just about communicating in a way where you can as you say, try to attain the solution.
Yeah, and I mean I agree with you to an extent, but I wouldn't say that the solution is necessary to Islamify things. I think rather the solution should come from an Islamic perspective.
Yeah. What does it mean to be? What is Islam in this century? And then using other resources around.
But like things, for example, like climate change. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge thing that people are talking about nowadays from the pulpit. But really, it should come from us, because we have that understanding of us being responsible for the earth. But we are. That's really these debates.
Even animal rights,
exactly.
even human rights.
These should be coming from us. We shouldn't be just responding to what other people are saying.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the house is important, in that we, in a way, and it may not be a fair criticism, but the house as an institution globally has gone stagnant to an extent, and I think it needs reviving. And I think it's places that are willing to challenge the norm that are going to make the difference.
Yeah. Although having said that, obviously, for example, climate change, there is a lot of information that come from, well, what I'm saying, they come from scientists, right?
Yeah.
They get a lot of data, they get analysis. So then obviously there's where the Islamic perspective comes in and says, okay, now we can apply it in that way, but you've got that data.
But look at our centres, right? Okay, so look at, if you want to know how effective the houses are, the centres are the filtered down, what happens on the lowest level, right? Do they deal with climate change? No. Do they deal with poverty? No. Do they deal with most of the problems? No. They do majalis, and they do a lot of charity. And so those are the two avenues where you'll see them the most, and maybe Islamic education. But all those other arenas aren't being tackled. And so there's a problem upstream where everything is coming, right? So that perhaps the direction isn't correct or whatever.
Yeah. That's where the humility comes in, isn't it?
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
realize that there's truths in other places, and
Yeah.
when you do have that Islamic lens, or that sort of embodiment, then you're able to see the solution and relate that to certain texts maybe. And I think obviously I'm saying it in a very general way, because a lot of people will say, what do you mean, that's very confusing, that's very wishy-washy, but we're speaking on very general terms here, and the discussions are way more intricate and way more in depth and detail.
And using what you just said as the point about humility as a springboard, just to go back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of what the Hawza has, how it's impacted us. I think one of the major things is just taking the example of our teachers and just seeing the humbleness, just the etiquette that they have of how they approached the
adab.
That's the best. Yeah.
We can have just a discussion on them alone.
Yeah.
They deserve discussion.
Yeah. I think that's one of the major impacts it's had. It's not just impacted us academically, but I think as people. We've learned to be better people through our teachers and through the books through the books that we studied.
The level of patience they have for us is for me as well. Sorry, not for you, for me especially.
Me as well, I think.
It's amazing. Yeah.
I think they always, from my point of view, as an offline student, I've always been really humbled when they try extra hard with me as well, because I'm not in the classroom all the time, but they'll always make sure that if I need any help, they'll say, okay, you know what, we're here all the time, anytime you want to ask a question, and therefore I have a tangible connection. Then I can only come here a couple of times, in a year or something like that, but they will go out of their way and make me feel welcome and things like that. So absolutely.